You may remember playing a game or watching a movie as a kid in the late hours of the night, where only the light came from the TV screen. All of a sudden, the screen goes black, and you're ripped from the immersion that protected you from the terrors of the night. Any noise around you is mortifying to hear, and you're afraid that someone has broken into your house.
Добрый вечер.
This feeling has become a narrative technique that has grown in both use and popularity across the world, with movies, shows, and even games purposely leaving the player with a sense of dread and a fear of isolation. For a lot of people, there's nothing worse than coming to the realization that you are alone in a dark room, and there might be something coming, or maybe it already has. This video will analyze how horror and suspense is built in games through the use of scopophobia, horror vacui, and the 4 stages of fear. The horror genre plays on people's scopophobia, or fear of being watched. Some great examples being the movie Hush and the game Outlast. Hush focuses on a deaf woman who's trapped within her house in the middle of the woods and is being pursued by a murderer. Many scenes in this movie show the murderer staring at his victim as she slowly realizes what's happening. Outlast focuses on independent journalist Miles Upshur breaking into a seemingly abandoned asylum. The developer of this game, Red Barrels, has noted that what he discovers walks a terrifying line between science, religion, nature, and something else entirely. Now let's take a step back and look at what makes these two mediums of horror scary. There's the side of something monstrous and grotesque, and then there's fear of personal relation, and both of them imbue the feeling of helplessness. Outlast is the more fictional horror, and Hush is the more realistic horror. The reason that Hush would be more scary to watch than Outlast is to play is because its plot has probability to happen in real life. To you. Welcome to the game. Published by Reflect Studios in June of 2016, Welcome to the Game is all about searching the deep web for clues to get to a red room. In internet folklore, a red room is a website that is nearly impossible to find, where there is a live stream of a person being tortured to death with the viewers deciding the methods.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to tonight's show, where you, the players, decide the entertainment for your twisted viewing pleasure.
Probably the most chilling part about this game is that each and every website that the player can view in this game is based on its real counterpart on the actual deep web. Games like this tend to rely on ambient sounds and music to create a sense of horror and paranoia. As you've been hearing in the background, the music for this game has a Hacker Man ambiance to it, a creepy track that slowly becomes a techno remix. Once the player starts the game, there's no longer any music, just the silence of the night. A friend named Adam calls on the computer and explains the basics of the game. Most importantly, though, is that Adam mentions 2 distinct threats.
Oh, wait a minute. A couple more things I forgot to mention. First, this is just an urban legend, so I'm not sure if it's true or not. But they say the farther you get into the deep web, kidnappers will try to locate and kidnap you. So be on the lookout for this. If you think someone is tracking you, just turn all the lights off and be quiet. Don't say a word. When you think the coast is clear, turn the lights back on. Now besides that, this I can promise you is real. Where you currently are, there is a serial killer on the loose. They call him the Breather. He looks for his victims browsing the deep web or random hitchhikers. It's kind of weird, but he also calls his prey before he kills them, breathing into the phone and saying other things that don't make sense. Hence why he's called the Breather.
It then becomes clear that you're not alone in the silence of the night. and that you need to get to the Red Room as soon as possible. This is really where the feeling of scopophobia and helplessness is created. There's nowhere to run or hide. There's only the option of turning the lights off and blocking the door. There are two main things the games use to create suspense and horror: sound and silence. In a game like this, there is no background music, and this makes each noise that you hear all the more terrifying. Each website that plays music is startling, and each step you take on the wooden floors feels like it will alert these killers. Worst of all, the silence is louder than anything, as you wait to hear what noise comes next. Welcome to the Game does a great job of creating suspense with the breather in particular. Getting that phone call to hear breathing is what turns the focus of the game from playing fast to playing smart. Sometime after the phone call happens and a car coming to a stop is heard, there's only one thought: survive. The narrative of this game, with it being Adam's expositional phone call, works to generate a slow creep from suspense to horror as the time goes on. Horror vacui is the fear of what is off-screen and not visible. The monstrous and murderous unseen that lies outside the frame constantly threatens to appear within it. Forced to move through this blind space, Welcome to the Game, as well as many other horror games, create the suspenseful conditions that erupt around the threat of the unseen. It has been described that there are 4 stages of fear scenarios: safe, caution, terror, and horror. Safe is when there is not a threatening environment. Caution comes after entering an environment where there is a threat. Terror is revealed when the presence of the threat is confirmed. And horror is the confrontation. Now look at how this is portrayed in Welcome to the Game, and let's go with duck season. The safe zone for Welcome to the Game would be most websites near the beginning of the game that provide puzzles to players and don't necessarily show them any danger, but leave them a little bit uncomfortable. The safe zone in duck season is very much akin to the original game Duck Hunt, played on VR, with a comical dog dancing around as you complete each level. The terror zone for Welcome to the Game resides in the late depths of the night, where players must turn the light off when they hear their backyard door open, just to sit terrified as they see the kidnapper walking through their backyard. The terror zone for duck season is more grotesque and violent, as players will turn around one time and see their mother murdered in the kitchen right behind them. The fear of being watched, the fear of the unknown, and the descent into horror all work to create horror and suspense in games. I open the door to anyone interested in researching more on the topic of horror in games to see how far the rabbit hole goes.